So the Fed cut rates by 25 basis points this week. You'd think that would be good news for mortgage rates, right? Well, not exactly. In fact, rates went up after the announcement. How does that happen? And more importantly, what does it mean for your household budget? I am Ron Siegel, certified liability advisor, helping families build wealth through strategic debt management. Let's talk about what happened this week because I'm getting calls from people who are confused. They see headlines saying Fed cuts rates, and they think mortgage rates should be lower. But when they call their lender, they find out rates actually increased. Here's what you need to understand. The Fed does not control mortgage rates. They control the Fed funds rate, which is a short-term rate that banks use when they lend to each other overnight. Mortgage rates are long-term rates, and they move based on what the bond market thinks about the future economy. The Fed cut rates on Wednesday as expected, but then Fed Chair Jerome Powell said something that spooked the markets. When asked about a December rate cut, he said it's not a far gone conclusion. Then he added two words that really hurt. Far from it. Markets immediately sold off. Why? Because everyone was expecting another cut in December, and Powell basically said, don't count on it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Powell pointed to two reasons for his caution. First, the government shutdown, which hit day 30 this week, means we're not getting the economic data the Fed needs to make decisions. Second, he's concerned about inflation data. But let me tell you something that's not getting enough attention. Kansas City Fed President Jeffrey Schmid, who dissented and voted against this rate cut, gave a speech this week where he claimed inflation is at 3%. Here's the problem. The actual published rate was 2.9%, and Powell himself said it's probably closer to 2.8%. So why is Schmid seeing ghosts in the inflation numbers? He also claims the labor market is balanced, but the layoff announcements we've seen tell a different story. General Motors just announced nearly 3,000 indefinite layoffs. Amazon, UPS, and other major companies have been announcing significant cuts. Through October, we've seen over 134,000 announced layoffs, the third largest month this year. Here's what this means for the housing market. Mortgage rates hit a 13-month low this week at 6.3% on a 30-year fixed. That should have been great news. But because rates moved up after the Fed announcement, we're right back where we were. And here's the thing. The Fed is dealing with something we've talked about before. The shelter component in inflation calculations is wrong. They're measuring housing costs in a way that it makes inflation look higher than it really is. We've discussed this countless times on my show. Now, let's talk about what's happening in the housing market itself. Pending home sales, which measures signed contracts, not closings, stayed flat in September at a depressed level. Since 2001, the pending index has averaged 100.6. Right now, it's at 74.8. That's 25.6% below normal. Even with the temporary dip in rates we saw, pending home sales did not move. Why? Because when major companies start announcing 5-digit layoff numbers, that uncertainty can offset lower borrowing costs. People get nervous about committing to major purchase. There was an interesting analysis this week comparing the Chicago Manufacturing Index to Austria's manufacturing numbers. Austria is a major supplier to the global auto industry, and their manufacturing index has been tracking very closely with Chicago's, which has traditionally been a key gauge of America's auto industry. Both are showing weakness, which tells us something about the broader economy. On the positive side, we did get some good news on the rental front. The apartment rental vacancy rate hit 7.2%, an all-time high for this index. When properties sit vacant, landlords are more inclined to reduce prices to get tenants in there. Since rental costs are a big part of the inflation picture, this should help bring those numbers down. So what does all this mean for you? Strategy beats rate always. If you're waiting for rates to hit some magical number before you make a move, you're focusing on the wrong thing. What matters is your household blended interest rate, the weighted average of all the debt you're carrying. What matters is the actual cash flow impact on your household budget. Don't get caught up watching individual loan rates when you should be looking at the complete picture of money flowing out of your household every month. That's where real wealth building decisions get made. Here's what I want to introduce to you is something that can help you see the complete picture of your household financial health. It's called Key Steps, And it's a free tool that gives you credit monitoring, identity theft protection, and household budgeting capabilities all in one place. Why am I telling you about this? Because you can't manage what you don't measure. KeySteps lets you see all your accounts in one place, track your spending, monitor your credit, and understand your complete financial picture. When you can see everything clearly, you can make better strategic decisions. Whether you're thinking about buying a home, refinancing, or just trying to get better control of your household finances, KeySteps gives you the visibility you need, and it's completely free. Looking ahead to next week, we'll get some important data, assuming the government reopens and start releasing numbers again. Wednesday brings the ADP employment report, which has become more important given the lack of government data. We'll also get the ISM Services Index. The big one is Friday, the Employment Situation Report. If the shutdown continues, we might not get it. But if we do, it'll be crucial for understanding what's really happening in the labor market. Remember, in uncertain times, strategy matters more than ever. Don't get distracted by headlines about Fed rate cuts. Focus on your household blended interest rate, your cash flow, and the strategic decisions that actually build wealth. If you want to get better control of your complete financial picture, visit rsrlinks.com/keysteps. Again, that's rsrlinks.com/keysteps. Free credit monitoring, identity theft protection, and household financial tools all in one place. I am Ron Siegel, your certified liability advisor, wishing you a great weekend, and we'll speak to you again next week.